Hello, it is Katie here from becomegroup.com, and I'm here with the amazing Miranda Dennis. Welcome, Miranda.
Hello.
So thank you for being here today. We were just chatting a little bit before we went live about how even though a lot of us do DBT, you can learn something new every single time, and you can learn something new if you're not a DBT therapist about how to use certain activities in group. But before we hop right in, Miranda, can you give us like your, rundown, who you are, what you do, who you
Sure. I'm Miranda Dennis, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker in New York as well as Virginia. And I'm a certified, nationally certified DBT therapist and the owner of Oasis Clinical Counseling Services in Norfolk, Virginia, where I provide individual and group DBT. Going to be adding a DBT consultation team soon, as well as Christian counseling. And more recently, I released a wellness planner integrating DBT with Christian principles and providing scriptures and a workbook and a planner for all of that. And because a lot of times it's difficult for Christians to balance their faith and what to do with basic skills. And I think DBT is so easy to integrate that into I do it all the time. So I found that this is a great way to service my Christian community as well.
That is very cool how you've blended the things that are important to you, right? Use
Yes.
to kind of propel your practice into something that has meaning beyond just going to work every day. And
absolutely.
It also makes a lot of sense. I feel like in Marshall Linehan's like last updated manual, there were ways to integrate different types of spirituality into DBT.
Yes. And I think that is so valuable because when I first was introduced to DBT back in 2011, I was like, I don't know if I want to be interested in that because I just felt like the two were different, and that's just not the case. There's really such an integration of spirituality, and I'm so thankful that she really expounded on that more recently.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that, regardless of religion or denomination or not having a religion, finding balance and finding your center within DBT always has made sense for me.
Absolutely.
So it's adaptable. Okay, so we have people on here live with us. I'm going to tell you some people that are here.
Okay.
Bess is here, my DBT soul sister.
Yes, I saw her replay. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Hey Bess.
Oh, Bess, P.S. I recommended you in our Philadelphia private practice network. They were like, does anyone know a therapist in Boston who's awesome? And I was like, in Boston, I think, or that area. Teresa, Dave, Beatrice. So we have some people here. Miranda, tell us the basic structure of your group, because everyone's here to get group inspiration. So tell us like what the breakdown is, what it looks like for you and your people.
Sure. I have to say I did do the group guru kind of course that you offered. Yeah. And so that was super helpful for me because at first I felt like I didn't have an infrastructure. I didn't have an intake process. I felt like I was just kind of taking whoever came. So now what I do is I advertise on my website or other means. This is the group that I have coming up. Currently I'm running an adult group. So they will start my intake process online, and well, actually they call me. We have a phone consultation. If I feel like, okay, this might be a good fit, then we will set an actual intake appointment where they come in the office, we sit down for an hour, we do a full assessment. I find out what are their group goals. What is it that you want to get from group? And then I figure out, okay, is this the group for you? Or do I need to start a new group? Or is this, or do I need to make a referral to someone in the community? Because that sometimes is the case as well. And that was something that I had struggled with before taking your course, is saying no. And saying like, oh man, that person isn't going to be a good fit. I felt like I had to take everybody. And when I did that, it really drastically affected the group dynamics. So just a word of caution for people. If you don't feel like somebody is a good fit, then you don't have to take them, and you can just say, I feel like this group isn't the one that's going to meet your needs. I don't have a current group that you fit into right now, but here's a community resource that also run DBT groups, and not be afraid of losing people for that, because if you just take everybody, then I think you almost lose your sense of direction, right? For where your and purpose of what your groups are for. So they'll do the intake session, and then they'll come in, and I'll decide, okay, well, this is the best group for them. And then I've kind of follow your basic plan of, they come in, we do introductions. I do the WW What Went Well. We'll start with that. I started integrating that, and they really enjoy that. And even these are adults. And so at first people were kind of like, I don't know anyone in here, but we start with some sort of group cohesion activity. I bought the story cubes, and believe it or not, adults really do like the story cubes.
So all these things, because I'm an adult who likes all these things, so I think there are other ones out there.
Yes. And at first, I kind of get the side eye, like, what? And then I just explain, and I just let each one of them roll a die, and then they start the story, and they really get into it, and it breaks the ice. So I find some activity such as the story cubes to break the ice. And then, I make sure people know who I am, what I do, just a little blurb, and why I'm passionate about DBT and what it can do for them. And I make sure to highlight, not everybody in the group is borderline. This group is for everyone, and everyone's here is here for a different reason, and to learn skills, and make sure they know that my group isn't a process DBT group. It is a skills-based DBT group. And I make that distinction especially for adults, because they don't want to share their business, right? It's their personal business, and I don't want people knowing what I'm going through. So I always say it's skills-based.
Okay, so they want skills-based. I find that's what I buck up against with my teens, is that they just want to talk. So the skills are like, I have to find creative ways to introduce them. But it sounds almost like the opposite is true for your adults. Like they're comfortable knowing that it's about skills and not self-disclosure. Yes,
absolutely. I'm able to create, I think, a better buy-in, because I say, well, you don't have to, you're not always talking about your feelings and your emotions. We do some of that, and you can give examples from your real life situations, but I'm not going to force you to divulge your trauma in this group. That's not this group. This group is to give you this. It wouldn't be appropriate. And they get that.
For a second, can you guys hear me? Because Beth just said my volume was low. Can you hear me better without the microphone? Miranda, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Hopefully it's still working. Go ahead, continue. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. And so just back to the structure of the group. So we'll do the introductions, what went well for the week. And then I also say, is there something going on that we should know about that you want us to be more sensitive about today? So if somebody lost a parent or someone, because that happened in my last group, and so we had to be more, they just needed a little extra grace. If somebody hasn't slept well the night before, they're like, I'm here, I'm really tired, so if I have just a resting, I don't care face, that's not what it is, I'm just tired. So I give them that space to own what they're going through, and then allow people to respect that. And then we go.
Really cool, because like it helps them to not misinterpret the facial expressions and responses.
Yes, absolutely. Because in particular with borderline, we know that that's an area that we focus on teaching them of how to interpret differently than maybe what their negative thoughts are telling them.
So they're not personalizing someone else's difficulties.
Absolutely. So we do that, and then of course mindfulness. I usually lead the mindfulness, except for actually this group, I'm about 6 weeks into it. So I've now asked each person to take a Monday and to own that Monday and to bring an activity for mindfulness. So at first they all paused and they looked at me like, I said, now who's going to volunteer for next week? And they all went,
Each other.
But I reminded them, I have the mindfulness cards. They can use, I have a workbook that I use. There's tons of mindfulness ideas in there that they can take from. They can Google one, and I have other resources that I've offered them. And then so they were more like, okay. And I said, you just follow exactly what I've been doing. You do the same thing in your own way. And so that kind of, smooth things over. And so we're going to start doing that. So after mindfulness, I review the home practice. I call it home practice instead of homework, because no one likes homework. I don't like homework. Adults definitely don't like homework. So I say, how did you practice the skill at home? Did you complete your home practice? And that seems to go over a little bit better than homework.
Yeah.
And now that they start integrating that word into their thinking, like, oh, okay, I need to practice the skill that Miranda has taught me, it feels less, I don't know, demanding, or it feels like less like they're gonna, if they don't do it, then they are just this horrible person and they failed at life because they didn't get 100% on their test.
Right.
And then if they struggle, I say that if you didn't understand, then we go through and say, okay, well, what were areas that maybe somebody else understood that you could explain to somebody in the group, and see how maybe I didn't explain it correctly, or not necessarily correctly, but in a way that they can understand.
Yeah.
And then so from there, we go teach a new skill, or whether it be a role play, and then we'll do wrap up. And so what are people, we do the top takeaways. What's your top takeaway from the group? And then I say, and how are you going to apply it to your life this week?
I love that. I love the second part of that, which is how are you going to apply it to your life this week? Another thing that I took from what you were saying is something that I've experienced too, where like I'll describe something in a certain way that makes total sense in my brain, but it's just not clicking for someone else. And so like having another person in the group explain it in a way that makes total sense that I would have never thought to say. So sometimes it's helpful to have someone else reflect that.
Yes. And that's what I love about the group dynamic, because, if I'm only in individual sessions and I'm only teaching the skills in the way that I think are meaningful, then I sometimes just go on robot automatic repeating the same things. And then I get in the group and I'm like, oh, there's another way of thinking about it that maybe I missed, or another way of explaining it. And I love that the group can pull it out and put it in their own words and make it plain. Because sometimes maybe I'm just using too many DBT terms and they're like, I don't know what that means. Yeah. But someone can say, oh, here's how I use that skill. And then it makes complete sense.
Exactly. I think it's so, again, like, what's that word? Adjustable, depending on who you're talking to. You actually have a question, Miranda. Are you willing to answer a question if I ask?
Sure.
Okay. So Dave says, I've read one book and several articles about DBT. It seems awesome, really, but I don't have the time, money, or energy to get formally trained and certified. What kind of DBT background do you think is necessary before I could competently run DBT skills groups? I'm particularly interested in adult skills groups like the one you're discussing. Okay, so I will answer a little bit from my perspective, and I'm curious about yours as well.
Sure.
I feel like the DBT skills are very human skills, that they're not just for borderline, and that they are, I have full groups that are anxiety, depression, ADHD that benefit so much from having these skills. So I think that they're applicable across multiple settings, and that you don't necessarily need to be certified in DBT to teach and share these skills with your clients, but it is about the way that you talk about who you are and how you're sharing them that I think becomes important, in that you can't say I'm running a DBT if you haven't had the proper training in DBT. It might be a DBT informed group or something like that. Do you want to add on to or share your part of that, Miranda?
Yes, I'm with you 100%. And I'm Marsha Linehan trained. And so, in the first training, or the first wave of her book was very, very stringent. If you are not intensively trained, then you cannot say and it has to be like the DBT informed. You cannot say I'm running a DBT group if you're not doing all of the components, right? The individual, the consultation, the groups. And now it's kind of changing a little bit, which is good. And so I think, Katie, you're absolutely right. We just have to be careful of how we are marketing ourselves and putting it out in the world, and the clients that you're serving. And just say, you know, I'm running DBT informed groups. Absolutely. These skills can be applied to so many different areas, substance abuse, anxiety and depression, all of these different areas can benefit. So there's tons of stuff online now as well, right? Lane Patterson does a lot of stuff online.
Lane has an 8-week online.
8-week online, yes.
I was trained. I shared this in Bess's video, like under someone who learned directly from Marsha Linehan, and then I did a year of supervision and practice before I even did my DBT group, and then I did Lane Peterson's training. So we have different trainings, and I totally respect the rigorous training that you've done. Honestly, it's kind of on my list to just go backwards and get more training because I love DBT so much.
Yes.
But I also feel like you can run a group that's very DBT informed without calling it DBT. Like you can run a group for adults that's called like coping with stress, and use some of those skills and market to like some of the needs that those people have that would be covered in DBT without
absolutely
words at all. Yeah. And thank you guys for sharing, Bess for sharing a skills training in the comments. So Miranda, tell us about your favorite group activity, something, you know, whether it's a skill or an interactive activity that you do in your groups.
Okay. So I'm really super excited about this because I've been using this skill all day. I am not a big speaker. I like to talk, but this is like, everyone's going to see this. So I've been really nervous. And I don't know if you guys can tell that, but I've been really nervous. Oh, good. It's working. The skill is working. So I do a lot of essential oils and diffusing of oils in all of my sessions, individuals as well as groups.
Yeah.
And the DBT self-soothe skill is my absolute favorite because I can just about do all of those skills. Let me see. Yeah, all of those skills at any point in time. So my favorite one that I'm going to talk about today is self-soothing with the sense of smell. So what I'll do typically in the group, I've been using this as a mindfulness activity. And so I will, I don't know if you guys can see that. So it's a little sandwich bag, those little half sandwich bags. And then I'll write the oil that I have in here on the cotton ball. And then I'll write a couple of things of what the oil benefits are. So this one is bergamot. So it's got confidence, calming, hormonal support. And so this has been me all day. Sniffing my bag, no, but just, and then so what I'll do is I will have, depending on how many people are in the group, I always have an additional 2 extra so that people they can choose whatever. So there might be lavender, peppermint, cedarwood, bergamot, into the future, motivation. I usually use Young Living essential oils. Yeah. And so they all will get one of their little bags. They'll all go up to the table, pick a bag, they'll read what it's about, and then we'll come back and spend some, mindful moments enjoying the scent. And what I did, normally I don't have anything else going on during that time. I just allow them to kind of see where the scent takes them, and then we process it. Well, this time I added just some relaxation music in the background, just to see if it would be a different, if the dynamics would be any different for anyone, or if that was more distracting or not. And it doesn't seem like the music mattered or not. People were still able to utilize the skill and as a way to kind of calm whatever emotion they might have been experiencing. Now, the only thing that I will say that happened last time that has never, ever happened in any of my other groups that I've done this is 3 people wanted the same scent. Yeah. And they were like, oh, no, you can have it. No, you have it. Did you really want it? I feel bad now. Oh, and they really, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this has never happened before. What do I do? But I allowed them to use skills and work it out, and they were able to kind of move past it. But because of that, at the end of the group, some people were feeling like, oh, I felt selfish because I wanted that scent. So I ended up just making everybody a little take home bag.
Right? Like good way to process some of those interpersonal effectiveness skills,
Yes.
and barriers to using them as well.
Absolutely, which happened to be the topic of the discussion for that night. So it went perfectly with being able to say, okay, well, look at the internal messages and myths that they were believing about themselves and their value and worth. And so, so that's my favorite activity.
So wait, I want to understand, because I actually do essential oils too in my groups, and we do like, I don't have one here, but like I get jars like this from Whole Foods that have a little spray, and I have them make their own essential oils.
Oh, yeah.
But I like what you were saying about how you write like what the oils do and allow them to, like, because I feel like the way I do it, I'm like, here's everything in the middle, you guys figure it out. But the way you do it is like, here's what this one does, like, what are you gravitating towards, what makes sense to you? So there's a little bit more organization where
and that's just me because I like order.
We all have our own way. Sometimes my way is here's everything in the middle, you guys figure it out. But I like that you're giving them more of like, what does each oil do, as opposed to just like, see what smells make sense to you. You're giving them more context and helping them figure out, how can I use this self-soothe sense of scent to actually create this end result that I'm looking for. And I think that's a powerful thing to do.
Absolutely.
So top 10, like your top tip for running groups, facilitating groups.
My top tip, and I've heard a couple people say the same thing, is like, it's okay to have a structure. And again, that's me. I like to know what I'm doing. So I actually have a workbook of the past 7 years of me doing DBT that I've collected all these different worksheets, and I'm constantly finding that I'm adding things to it. So I've got to stop myself at some point. But I like having, and adults like having that, because they're like, this is tangible. I can take this, and if I'm at home, I can send Miranda a message and she can tell me, oh, turn to page and review this skill. So they enjoy having something that's tangible. The other thing though is I've learned that sometimes we don't even use the book. Like, it's good to have it. And it's good to give myself permission not to have to stick with the structure that I have in my mind for what I want. And then the other thing that I'm learning is to, is again, kind of going back to the group dynamic of things, because a lot of the clients that I have in my group are also in individual therapy with me, which is an added benefit, because sometimes they will remember something that I taught them months ago. I don't remember even saying it, but they can say it sometimes even more eloquent than I have it in my mind. So being okay with the group running itself, and that, yes, okay, I might be the expert in the field, I might be the expert in this particular group, but the clients know what they need, and they also can, they have been able to process the things that I've been teaching over the last couple months and share it. So that's where the true learning takes place. And so that's more valuable to me than my little workbook and what I think that we need to accomplish in the day.
I love the way that you put that. So I love the workbook, and I too have like a binder of everything that I've collected and continue to collect over the years. But the idea that like you've taught these skills and that now they're teaching each other, and they're experiencing like the peer feedback that comes with all being together and helping each other through challenges by using these skills. More powerful, I think, than you and a client sitting in a room and you just telling them about it. Like, that's a true testament to the power of groups right there.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I could talk about DBT groups all day. As I said with Bess, I feel like we all need to get together and just talk about it and share our passions and future goals. So for those of you who are watching and haven't taken the CE course yet about group activities and screening, Bess had mentioned how helpful the screening process was for her. Miranda just mentioned it as well. Help you create like your velvet rope policy so that you're not just accepting anyone through the door. Gives you some ideas of group activities and supplies that could be helpful. Miranda had mentioned the story cube. There's a couple other things like that in there. So if you're interested, the doors close Friday for enrollment. So go ahead and click the green buttons that says get 6 CE credits in group activities if you want to check that out. And thank you, Miranda, again. I'm sure we'll be.
You're welcome.
Nobody could tell you were nervous. You have an awesome presence. And
Oh, great.
I'll definitely be following along and seeing what you do in your groups.
Awesome. Thank you.
And,
Bye.
bye, everyone.